एकं त्वक्षरम् हृदि निरन्तरम् भासते स्वयं लिख्यते कथम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वता मज्जता भवनचरणरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम् देहं मृण्मयवत् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तथ भावशक्तिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भावतः ॐ भावयुतः कुतो वरधिया दृष्टात्मनिष्ठात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयम् सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयम्. Namo Ramana. In this the Thursday satsang from Ramanacentre Center for Learning, as usual, we will be reading from the work Guruvachaka Kovai by Muruganar Swamigal. We will be reading two verses. Each verse reading will be followed by a short meditation on its meaning, and that will be followed by a 10-minute practice session of Atma Ucharam. After these two segments, the verse reading, the meditation on the meaning, and the practice session are completed, there will be a summing up by our President, Dr. Sharadaka, and that will be followed by the chanting of Sri Ramanashkotram by Vaibhavji and Pratnama. We commence this evening satsang by taking verse number 530 selected for us. The verse 530 comes in the segment, appears in the segment meditation on the truth. The other two segments are, the preceding segment is investigation into truth, followed by meditation on the truth, and then anubhavam, experience of the truth. This we find in the sub-segment indirect knowledge or paroksha jnana. Direct knowledge is termed as aparoksha jnana in Sanskrit. Paroksha jnana means indirect knowledge. In that we find the verse 530. There is a note from Sri Ramana Paravidyopanishad, which is by Lakshman Sharma sir. So we commence the verse reading. Verse number 530. While the non-dual knowledge, while the Advitiya Jnana, the Jnanam, which is the experience of the pure Paramatma Swarupa, is direct experiential knowledge, while the non-dual knowledge, the Advitiya Jnana, which is the experience of the Paramatma Swarupa, it is direct experiential knowledge. That is, it is aparoksha jnana, concocting a false attribution, paroksha, and calling it paroksha jnana is like calling the vile rakshasas, demons, as virtuous people. So that which is to be felt directly as aparoksha jnana, if we call it as indirect or paroksha jnana, it is like calling the rakshasas as virtuous people. That is, indirect knowledge, when we call it as the jnanam, it is like calling rakshasas as devas or virtuous people. There is a note, so I am reading the note. Indirect or inferential knowledge, paroksha jnana, can never be a variety of jnana, true knowledge. Associating the ignorance inherent in this indirect knowledge with jnana is compared to calling evil demons as virtuous people. We go to the Sri Ramana Paravidyopanishad, verse 53. This theoretical knowledge is only intellectual, but intellect has no access to the real self. Just as evil spirits are ironically styled as good people, so, within inverted commas, good people, so this ignorance is styled within inverted commas, knowledge. This theoretical knowledge is only intellectual, but intellect has no access to the real self. In the real self, the intellect cannot penetrate. Intellect has to be dropped to have aparoksha anubhuti. Intellect has no access to the real self. Just as evil spirits are ironically styled as, within inverted commas, good people, so this ignorance, the theoretical knowledge contained in the intellect, this ignorance is called knowledge unknowingly. We should not even call it as knowledge, says Bhagavan through this verse. Now, this is a fear which Ganapati Muni also addresses in the Chatvarimshat. The verse is, in Chatvarimshat, the verse is Dharme Nasham Upagate Tribhuvane Paryakule Papataha Prajnane Parito Giram Patimuda Sancharya Mane Janaihi Sadbhave Parameshwarasya Chapitu Sandeha Dolam Gate Dvipakaitava Martyakeki Turaha Swamantarakas Satam. What Ganapati Muni is pleading to Bhagavan as Bhagavan is that now when righteousness is under threat, when the three worlds are in the turmoil of evil, when people vainly bandy about knowledge in terms of words, what Ganapati Muni is saying is that Prajnane parito giram pati mudha sancharya mane janahi sadbhave parameshwarasya chapitu sandeha dolam gati. These are times when intellectual knowledge is mistaken to be anubhavam. These are times when intellectual knowledge is mistaken to be anubhavam, where one even denies the existence of Parameshwara. The atheism is on the rise. So you have to come and free us of this evil, says Ganapati Muni to Bhagavan. That is, these are times when the intellect mistakes intellectual knowledge for Anubhavam or Paramatma Swarupa Anubhavam, which can be only had in the direct experience of that. The Paramatma cannot be experienced by any other. The sensitivity of Paramatma is of such nature that everything else becomes jada. So only by identifying with that, only by being one with that, only by being directly that, can one have the anubhuti, the experience. That's why in the verse it is said, while non-dual knowledge means there is no duality in it. There is no experiencer experiencing the experienced. All the three are now only one. While the non-dual knowledge, which is the experience of the Paramatma Swarupa, why it is called Paramatma Swarupa? All beings, Ishavasyam Idam Sarvam. All this that we see and ourselves can be nothing else other than that Isha or the Paramatma, where all the deities, all the gods, all the divine ones, they lose their differences. They completely lose themselves as something apart from each other. They all coalesce. They all become one into the Paramatma. And that, how to experience that? Except by being one with that. What is the problem that comes in the way? The problem that comes in the way is the intellect. Intellect has, by the present day, it has evolved into subtle thoughts. It is very subtle. The children of today can't stand one harsh word because it gives them pain. They have become subtle beings. So definitely that is not the way to teach them. It is not by harsh words, but by enlightening the inquiry in them, that the intellect is asked to inquire into the truth. Because they have become subtle. The problem is that we mistake intellectual knowledge, the subtle thoughts themselves, to be the aparoksha anubhuti. How to overcome? That is why it is condemned in the worst possible terms by Bhagavan here. He says to mistake the intellectual knowledge, which may appear very subtle. You keep on meditating on something, or then those thoughts become subtle, and the subtle experience of thoughts, leaving other areas open, we feel we have got experience of the truth. That danger is pointed out in this verse by Bhagavan by saying that intellectual knowledge, where the anubhavam is through thought, is through the thinker, thinking and thought. If you mistake it for the aparoksha anubhuti of the advitiya jnana, it is like saying the evil, the devil people are good. That is what the Ramana Paravidyopanishad and the verse number 530 are alerting to us. In one of the earlier Madurai workshops that Akka used to take me along with the RMCL team in the initial years, I think it must be the first year or second year, 2009 or 2010. One of all the devotees there, they are all sadhakas of Atma Vicharam. They come repeatedly every year, and RMCL has been doing that workshop for more than 25 years. In that workshop, one person was asking that I go to the thought-free state, but then very subtly some thought arises and says that this is the thought-free state. I can continue to have that thought, isn't it? He was asking, and the answer is obviously no. The first rise of thought should be worked out. That is the intellect rising from there and saying, now I am in thought free state. So one has to catch it there itself. One has to catch the indirectness there itself and ask for whom is this thought, and gently, subtly, because there the intellect cannot be worked with force. With as gentle the abstract thought is, with the same gentleness, one has to let go of the thought and inquire for whom has this thought arisen, who am I, and return to the Advitiya Atma. In the Advitiya Atma, all the divine entities are present, coalesced, and as one, as the Parama Atma. What more do we want? What more can we ask from a Sadguru, from Bhagavan? No jiva can ask for anything more from the Guru that it finds. And Bhagavan takes us there. Bhagavan takes us there to the Paramatma Swarupam in Atma Vicharam. And he cautions us. The moment the intellect arises and say, see, I have experienced. What happened there in that incident? Did this Guru also experience it or not? When these thoughts arise, immediately one should be alert, one should be aware, and one should inquire for whom is this thought and take that rising intellect and ego back to the source. Because as the verse says, the intellect has no place in the Advitiya Atma. For intellect to be an instrument, the ego has to arise. Ego and the intellect rise together in the Dvitiya Anubhava. It can never be the Aparoksha Anubhuti. So one has to be aware of this. One has to be take caution of this fact given by Bhagavan, that one can mistake intellectual knowledge for Aparoksha Anubhuti. In Aparoksha Anubhuti, thoughts and intellect have no place. So one has to take care, but the Anubhava itself is so clear, is in such silence that there is no mistaking it. That's why Bhagavan says, whoever asks how to help me find my way, Bhagavan says, do you need to be shown the way in your own home? Turn inward, that's enough. The inward journey is your home. Why do you need an external guru to show you the way? Turn inward and inquire, who am I? The way will reveal itself. Because the Paramaguru, the Paramatman, is waiting there to absorb us and to reveal in the Aparoksha Anubhuti what the Advitiya Jnana is. Till that Advitiya Jnana is realized to be our very nature. Just like breathing, that is what we are. Till that is our natural state, one should make the effort of putting aside thought, which is always indirect knowledge, and go for the direct knowledge, the Aparoksha Anubhuti, by inquiring for whom is this thought, who am I? With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit in practice for 10 minutes. Revathi, I think you have to help us out today. Is it
yes, sir. I'll take it for 10 minutes.
Normal. We go to the reading of the second verse. The verse selected 610. This too is from the segment on meditation on the truth, and the subsegment is pramada, forgetfulness of the self. 610. There is a short note from Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham, verse 38. In the previous verse 529, there is a comment from someone. I'll just read that. In the previous verse 529, we had read 530. Using Paroksha Jnanam, he is likened to using mirage water to quench thirst. Also, to cooking Etu Churakai. So, Anantnarayan sir has highlighted that the reference in 530 was to call intellectual or indirect knowledge as Anubhavam. He is like calling the Asuras as Devas within inverted commas. And Anantnarayan sir has brought us these two parallels also. That is using mirage water to quench thirst and equivalent to cooking Etu Churakai, like just reading the menu is eating food like that. Can ever reading the menu be equal to actually eating the food? They are two different things. So Etu Churakai is something like that. That you see the Surakai in the paper. How can it be a cooked dish? So those are parallels which also indicate that intellectual knowledge can never be the aparoksha anubhuti. We go to the verse number 610. How indeed can you be disgraced by others? How indeed can you be disgraced by others if you remain as the perfect primal entity that exists as the foremost one? When eminent people fall from their state through unbefitting conduct, they will be disgraced like hair that has fallen from the head. I'll read that again. How indeed can you be disgraced by others if you remain as the perfect primal entity that exists as the foremost one? When eminent people fall from their state through unbefitting conduct, they will be disgraced like hair that has fallen from the head. The final sentence about the hair and the head is taken from Tirukural, verse 964. There is this Anubandham verse where in verse 38 Bhagavan says, without thinking of oneself as apart from others, without swerving from one's true state, if one abides always in oneself, who is there alien to one? What matters if what people say of one? What matters if one praises or blames oneself? Tannaitan vaalthiginum taழ்த்திகினும் yen. If one praises oneself or one lowers oneself, how does it matter? தானன்றி யாருண்டு தன்னை யார் என் சொல்லில் என் தான் தன்னை வாழ்த்துகினும் தாழ்த்துகினும் தான் என்ன தான் பிறரென் ரோராமல் தன்னிலையில் பேராமல் தான் என்று நின்றிடவே தான். So that is the verse in Anubandham which says that the essence of the meaning in the Guru Vachakakoi verse 610 is reflected in the Anubandham also. The essence is like this, that when The self alone is, and you are abiding in that supreme, in that foremost one. Then somebody, the eye witnesses that somebody comes and says, you are a useless fellow, eating off others' sweat. Now, how does that affect us? Bhagavan says, when someone slanders us, how does that affect? Should we return the slander? Or even when not slandered, should we slander somebody? There is this story, interesting story, which is narrated by Bhagavan in spiritual stories. The story goes somewhat like this: that a person invites a few others for a homage, a dinner, which is an offering to God, and all of them have come there to partake in that dinner. And the wife of the home, she has cooked sambar or something, rasam, into which a leech falls from the roof into the, and it is the last few moments before serving, and she dutifully asks the gentleman, should we serve this or should we not serve this? And the gentleman says, thinks over and says, it's all right, remove the leech and serve the food. Now that night, Chitragupta comes in the dream of that person, and he says, you have committed a blunder. Your path to moksha is now blocked by a mountain of leeches because you have served that food so carelessly. And that gentleman in the dream, because he is a upasaka of Chitragupta, he asks there itself, please tell me the prayaschitta. And Chitragupta says, you behave in such a way, not actually doing sin, you behave in such a way that others will slander you. When each person slanders you, he takes away part of your sin. And he does something which is slanderable, though he is not actually doing it. So they all start, the village people start slandering him, and the narrative comes to a husband and wife who are sitting and watching that gentleman walk, and the wife slanders that gentleman. See what a sinful act he is doing. And the husband says, oh, you have taken the last few leeches from his way, and his sins are over, now he can go. Now that is the narrative which Bhagavan gives, that when someone slanders in the normal course of Karma Yoga, the meaning is that that person takes the sins of the one whom he is slandering. Now, keeping that aside, in the Jnanam, in the Advitiya Jnanam, what does it matter if someone praises you or curses you? It doesn't matter at all, because it is Ekameva Dvitiyam. There is only you. Therefore, it is you who is slandering yourself. It is you who is praising yourself. Both should be left unmoved. The awareness should be left untouched by slander or praise. That is the Tirukular verses. Suppose we come into Dvitiyam. We take the Dvitiya to be real. Leave all those great deities coalesced into the Supreme Self. We leave that and take this duality to be real. That then you deserve to be treated like a fallen hare, says the Tirukural. If you have left the high state which life has given you, which God has given you, to be in the Advitiya state, and you yourself let that go and come into and feel that the slanders and praises are real, then you deserve to be treated like a hair that has fallen from the head. What will it will be swept and thrown into the garbage. So don't slide from the state of Advitiya Anubhava is the essence of the verse. That's what Bhagavan calls as abiding in self. Atmanishto bhavatvam. Atmanishto bhavatvam is not just experience the thought-free state once and go around claiming that you are now experiencing the thought-free state, but abide in the self. See everything in the self. When the self is seen, everything is seen. Nothing else needs to be seen. In that absolute awareness, free of thought, quenched of and removed of thoughts, there is nothing else to be seen. There is no going, there is no coming, there is only being. Atmanishto bhavat. Once that Atma has been experienced, one should return to it again and again till that becomes natural. Till abiding in the self becomes natural. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us touch that thought free state by letting go of thought and inquiring for whom is this thought and taking the I thought to the source. And keep practicing, keep going there fearlessly again and again. And be that thought free consciousness, which is the oneness of all the great ones together, waiting there for us to embrace us in Sayujyam. Ninan Arappuli Nidangali Mayamai Nindridum Nilayarul Arunachala. Where that Sayujya Padavi with the self is awaiting, is the only reality, and the sadhana and struggle becomes illusory. That I did all these things and then joined the self is not there in the self. All the paths vanish into the self. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit in practice for 10 minutes. Revathi, you can set the time for us.
Yes, Uncle, sure.
request our President, Dr. Shardaka, to give their summing up remarks.
Please unmute yourself, Akka.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we have been able to delve into his teachings and also specially to sit for sessions of self-inquiry. Because as Bhagavan is saying, that is the practice is the reason for which all this meditation is being done. Any amount of intellectual understanding, Bhagavan is telling us, that could be a help or it could sometimes even become a hindrance. If I understand that, what my mind could tell me is, yes, I know what the self is. Let us look at Bhagavan's own life. We find that Bhagavan did not even know what is the word Brahman or Atman, or in fact, he says that he used to think he had some kind of a strange, sweet illness, which is a blissful illness, which made him different from everyone else because he never even knew what was this Atma Tattva, but he experienced it directly. By that, his life is a proof to us that it does not require any intellectual preconditioning or awareness to be abiding in the self. At the same time, as Nandakumarji points out to us often, today the intellect is very sharp, very subtle, very high. Because of that, Bhagavan has given us the self-inquiry as a path that can help us to transcend the intellect. Otherwise, it's very difficult to transcend the intellect. The intellect can be transcended only through surrender or through inquiry. That's why Bhagavan says one of the two has to be there. Either surrender has to be there or inquiry has to be there. But if we see the surrendered intellect, like we have in the case of Ganapati Muni, where such a sharp intellect and so much tapasya had been done to reach the absolute subtlety of that. And then what did that intellect do for him? It showed him the limitation of that very intellect. It showed him that he needs to surrender to the Sadguru to get the awareness of the truth. So that becomes the beauty of the intellect, because we do not have another tool also. If that tool of the intellect understands its own limitation, it becomes a very, very beautiful tool, and it can help us to transcend either through surrender or through inquiry. The subtleness of inquiry can be understood because the intellect points out, it says, no, this is your identification. This is a subtle identification rising next. This is a subtle identification rising next. And as Bhagavan says in the next verse, which is brought to us, because if we get caught in it, if we get caught in that intellectual identity, then the fall can be really, really bad, because the higher we go, the deeper the fall. So the warning which Bhagavan is giving us here is to remain alert and to remain, I would say, also surrendered. We must remain surrendered, because if we are not surrendered, then the intellect can actually literally swallow us. So Bhagavan is saying you may fall. If you fall from eminence, then there cannot be anything worse than that. He's saying it's like hair fallen from the head. It cannot even grow back. That's over. So the point is to remain alert. And what gives us that alertness? It is the self-inquiry itself which gives us that alertness. That the more we hold on to self-inquiry, the more it will reveal to us the subtle play of the intellect itself. But so the intellect must be used only to hold to self-inquiry. The intellect itself can be used to understand that surrender alone, grace alone can do anything. The intellect, the best use and really probably the only use of the intellect is to understand its own limitation. So Bhagavan's grace and our prayerful surrender to him should allow us to understand the limitation and then use the intellect in the manner in which he allows the use. Like all Bhagavan's devotees were great intellectuals, every one of them. It is amazing what they could have done with their intellect. But what did they do? We can take Shastri Mama, the great astrologer. He could just predict a thing in a moment. He could predict the future absolutely accurately. But then he went and asked Bhagavan. He asked him, Bhagavan, is not astrology a great science? Bhagavan said, yes, of course it is. So you see, Bhagavan does not deny anything. Yes, of course it is. But nothing can equal Atma Vidya. That's all. Immediately he understood that he must surrender his astrology and pursue only Atma Vidya. By Bhagavan's grace, let us also be blessed to find the culmination of that for which he has brought us to his feet, of that for which he has allowed us to sit in self-inquiry. And of course, that very grace will find its culmination. It is only for us to remain waiting for it to reveal its play and find its fruition. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramanaka. Vaibhavji and Pratnama, we can start the chanting. The puja will be by Manjunath at Palapur.
नमो रमण भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावलिः अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योमि मात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि ॐ महासेन महंसेन जाताय नमः ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः ॐ गुरवे नमः ॐ अखण्डसंविदाकाराय नमः ॐ महौजसे नमः ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः ॐ जगद्धितावताराय नमः ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहासळे लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः ॐ तीव्राय नमः ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः ॐ इन्दुमौलिना पितृमते नमः ॐ पितुरादेशतः शोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः ॐ तपोमयाय नमः ॐ उदासीनाय नमः ॐ महायोगिने नमः ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः ॐ कुशाग्रधिये नमः ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः ॐ सवित्रे नमः ॐ स्थिराय नमः ॐ तपक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः ॐ फुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः ॐ च्यूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः ॐ चूर्णिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः ॐ त्रिगुणातिगाय नमः ॐ विरूपाक्ष गुहावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजितचलाकृतये नमः। ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्य निभाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईड्याय नमः। ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्रीशोणाचलरिद्बोधस्कन्धाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्चिन्न संशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ ऋक्शान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणात् बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः। ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः। ॐ शोणादृशस्तुतित्रष्टे नमः। ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ गुहाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ देवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनाम पूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थानोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्याजनिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रह सुप्रवाह विवश तादात्म्यभावङ्गतः विनिष्टस्वगभीर नित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनः सेकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदम् लोकोत्तर ज्योतिषे। ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय।
नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दर्शन सुख मंगल मुख सकल जीवहित सम्मुख ब्रह्म संख्ये नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानंद पुष्ट परम महर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡುತ್ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೋಡಿಕಾರನೇ ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि। बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की जय।
ನಮೋ ರಮಣ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮೋ ರಮಣ.